Oh God, the cable's snapping. Someone help me. Megan's terrified scream echoed through the Tower of Terror's elevator shaft, piercing through the mechanical groans and the cheerful screams of riders below. For a heart-stopping moment, everything seemed to pause. The attraction's haunting soundtrack continued playing. Guests in the loading area looked up confused. Cast members froze at their positions. From the maintenance platform 130 feet above, senior technician Jake Morrison's voice cracked over the radio. Code red Tower Alpha shaft. Get everyone out now. She's going to fall. But the emergency brakes didn't engage. The backup safety cable had already failed. In the dim emergency lighting of the shaft, other maintenance workers watched helplessly as Megan clung to a service ladder, her safety harness dangling uselessly from a severed attachment point. Please, I can't hold on much longer. Her voice was barely audible over the rumbling of the ride vehicles still operating in the adjacent shafts. Below, horrified guests were being evacuated as quickly as possible, but everyone knew they were running out of time. February 15. Walt Disney World's Tower of Terror, Megan Lewis, 19-year-old cast member, 3 years of perfect safety records, beloved by colleagues, admired by guests. But behind the carefully maintained illusion of Disney magic was an aging attraction, deferred maintenance, and a corporate culture that prioritized operational efficiency over employee safety. In less than 90 seconds, a routine maintenance check would become a tragedy that would forever shatter the myth of the happiest place on Earth. Megan Lewis would never walk out of that elevator shaft. You're watching Tragedies Behind the Magic. If this story moves you, subscribe, like, and share. Because what you're about to witness is a tragedy that Disney never wanted you to know about. Megan Lewis wasn't just a Disney cast member. She was Disney incarnate, the kind of person who radiated the joy and wonder that the company spent billions trying to manufacture. At 19, she had already become something of a legend among her fellow cast members at Hollywood studios. Her Instagram account at magicalmeganwdw had over 150 zero followers who lived vicariously through her behind-the-scenes glimpses of Disney magic. Megan started as a college program participant when she was 17, fresh out of high school with stars in her eyes and mouse ears on her head. While other participants complained about the long hours and demanding guests, Megan thrived. She volunteered for every extra shift, learned the history of every attraction, and could recite Walt Disney's opening day speech from memory. She was different from day one, recalled Sarah Chen, her former trainer. Most CPs are just trying to survive their program. Megan wanted to understand how the magic worked. She'd stay after her shifts, asking questions about ride mechanics, show programming, anything that went into creating the experience. By 18, Megan had been accepted as a full-time cast member and specifically requested placement at the Tower of Terror. The attraction fascinated her, its complex storytelling, elaborate theming, and especially its revolutionary ride system. She studied the attraction's technical manuals in her spare time, earning the nickname Tower Girl from colleagues who found her obsession both endearing and slightly concerning. Her supervisors noticed her technical aptitude and dedication. In an unprecedented move for someone so young, Megan was offered an apprenticeship with the attraction's maintenance team. It was a dream come true. She would learn the mechanical secrets behind the magic while still interacting with guests during operational hours. Megan's social media evolved from typical cast member content to fascinating technical deep dives. She'd post videos explaining how audio animatronics worked, what happened during ride breakdowns, and the intricate safety systems that kept guests safe. Disney's social media team initially loved the positive publicity, though some executives worried about revealing too much behind-the-scenes information. But Megan's enthusiasm had a dangerous edge. She wanted to impress her maintenance supervisors, to prove she belonged in a department traditionally dominated by veteran technicians. She began taking shortcuts that more experienced workers would never consider, checking equipment during operational hours instead of waiting for scheduled downtime, climbing into restricted areas without proper safety protocols, dismissing concerns from colleagues as overcautious. "I tried to tell her she was being reckless," said Jake Morrison, the senior technician who became her mentor. "But she'd laugh it off, say I was being paranoid. She'd point out that she knew every inch of that tower, every bolt, every cable. She thought that knowledge made her invincible." Her Instagram posts became increasingly daring. Videos of her in maintenance corridors while the ride operated, photos from angles that required her to be in precarious positions, time-lapse footage of overnight maintenance that revealed just how much constant work went into keeping the 30-year-old attraction running. Each post got thousands of likes and comments from Disney fans amazed by the exclusive access. Management was conflicted. Megan's content drove engagement and portrayed cast members as dedicated professionals, but safety officers raised concerns about the risks she was taking and the example she was setting. Several verbal warnings were issued, but they were half-hearted. Megan's work was exemplary, her guest satisfaction scores perfect, and her social media presence valuable free marketing. In January, just weeks before the accident, Megan posted what would become a tragically prophetic video. Standing on a maintenance platform high in the tower's shaft, she panned the camera down the dizzying drop before turning it on herself. "People always ask if I'm scared working up here," she said, her face lit by work lights against the mechanical darkness. "But when you understand how everything works, when you respect the engineering, there's nothing to fear. This tower and I, we trust each other." The video went viral, garnering over 1 million views. Comments poured in calling her brave, incredible, inspirational. Disney executives, seeing the positive publicity, quietly dropped their objections to her content. The safety officers' concerns were filed away, unheeded. Megan's final Instagram post, uploaded the morning of February 15, showed her standard Tower of Terror costume with her new maintenance credentials clipped to the belt. The caption read, "Another magical day keeping the tower dropping. Remember, in this world of bolts and motors, the real magic is the dedication of cast members who make sure you have a safe, thrilling experience. See you in the Hollywood Tower Hotel." Gored. Within hours, that dedication would cost Megan her life, and the tower she trusted would become her tomb. The Twilight Zone Tower of Terror wasn't just a ride, it was a mechanical marvel that pushed the boundaries of theme park engineering when it opened in 1994. Standing 199 feet tall, deliberately 1 foot short of requiring aircraft warning lights, the attraction housed one of the most complex ride systems ever created. But by 2024, this aging giant was hiding dangerous secrets behind its meticulously maintained facade. The ride utilized a unique system of elevator cars that could move both vertically and horizontally, shuttling guests through show scenes before reaching the drop shaft. The actual drop sequence was controlled by massive motor systems and cables, capable of pulling the elevator cars up and dropping them faster than gravity, creating the signature moment of weightlessness that thrilled millions of guests. But what guests didn't know was that this revolutionary system was showing its age in ways Disney didn't want to acknowledge. Internal maintenance reports, later revealed through investigations, documented a troubling pattern of deferred repairs and band-aid solutions. The attraction's original designers had recommended complete cable replacement every 15 years. By 2024, some cables were running on 30 years of continuous operation. The tower was like a classic car that looked pristine on the outside, but was held together with duct tape under the hood, explained Dr. Michael Torres, a theme park engineering consultant who reviewed the case. Disney's maintenance teams were exceptional at keeping it running, but they were fighting a losing battle against time and corporate pressure to avoid extended downtime. The problems went deeper than aging cables. The ride's computer control systems, state-of-the-art in 1994, were now obsolete. Replacement parts had to be custom fabricated or salvaged from other attractions. The shaft safety systems, emergency brakes, backup cables, and platform locks were all original equipment, subjected to 3 decades of Florida heat, humidity, and constant operation. Most concerning were the inspection reports from 2023 that documented unusual wear patterns on the main support cables and intermittent failures in the emergency brake systems. These reports recommended immediate, comprehensive inspection and possible ride closure for extensive refurbishment. Instead, maintenance was instructed to increase inspection frequency and replace components as needed to minimize operational impact. The tower's unique design created additional hazards for maintenance workers. Unlike modern attractions with built-in service corridors, tower maintenance required technicians to work in the active ride path. Safety protocols mandated complete ride shutdown during any shaft work, but pressure to maintain operational capacity led to increasingly dangerous compromises. We were told to do quick checks during load cycles, revealed a former technician who requested anonymity. You'd have maybe 45 seconds while the elevator was in show scenes to inspect shaft equipment. It was insane, but if you complained, you'd get labelled as not a team player and transferred out. The attraction's vertical shaft design created what engineers call a catastrophic failure cascade risk. If one safety system failed, the backup systems could be overwhelmed in sequence. The emergency platforms were spaced too far apart, a conscious design choice to maintain show quality that created deadly gaps in safety coverage. The ladder systems, meant for emergency evacuation, were narrow and difficult to navigate, especially for workers carrying equipment. Internal emails obtained during the investigation revealed a maintenance department in crisis. Requests for extended downtime were repeatedly denied. Orders for replacement parts were delayed or cancelled due to budget constraints. Experienced technicians who raised safety concerns were reassigned or encouraged to transfer to other departments. The tower's popularity made it untouchable. As one of Disney's most iconic attractions, generating millions in revenue through merchandise, PhotoPass sales, and Lightning Lane fees, any extended closure was seen as unacceptable. The attraction had to run at maximum capacity, especially during peak seasons, regardless of the strain on aging systems. Just 3 weeks before Megan's accident, a near-miss incident occurred that should have triggered immediate action. During routine operation, a backup cable, partially severed, caught only during a scheduled inspection. The cable was replaced, but no investigation was conducted into why it failed. No analysis of whether other cables might be similarly compromised. The incident report was filed with a classification that didn't trigger upper management review. The tower's shaft environment itself was hostile to both equipment and humans. Temperatures could exceed 120 degrees in summer. Hydraulic fluid mist coated everything in a fine film. The constant mechanical stress of launches and stops created metal fatigue that was difficult to detect without comprehensive testing that would require extended shutdown. The morning of February 15, the Tower of Terror started its day like any other. The opening maintenance check showed all systems operational. The ride's computer reported no errors. The first guests of the day screamed with delight as they plummeted down the shaft, never knowing that above them, critical safety systems were one failure away from catastrophe. When Megan Lewis clipped into her safety harness that morning to perform what should have been a routine cable inspection, she was trusting equipment that multiple experts had flagged as potentially compromised. She was entering a shaft where safety margins had been steadily eroded by decades of deferred maintenance and corporate priorities that placed show quality over worker safety. The Tower of Terror was a testament to Disney's creative ambition, but it had become a deadly example of what happens when the magic becomes more important than the machinery that creates it. Walt Disney World sells itself as the most magical place on Earth. But behind the pixie dust and character meet and greets lies a corporate machine driven by quarterly earnings, stockholder expectations, and relentless pressure to maximize profits. By 2024, this pressure had created a culture where safety concerns were systematically minimized, whistleblowers silenced, and preventable tragedies became inevitable. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Former Disney executives traced the shift to the early 2010s, when new leadership prioritized aggressive cost-cutting and efficiency optimization. Maintenance budgets were slashed by 30%, even as attendance soared. The philosophy changed from fix it before it breaks to run it until it fails. The old Disney would shut down an attraction for weeks to ensure perfect safety, explained James Martinez, a former VP of operations who left in 2019. The new Disney calculated the revenue loss of downtime against the statistical probability of incidents. Guest safety was still paramount, but employee safety became negotiable. Internal documents revealed a points-based system that penalized attractions for unnecessary downtime. Maintenance supervisors who kept rides operational received bonuses. Those who advocated for extended safety closures found themselves reassigned or pushed out. The Tower of Terror, as a headliner attraction, faced extraordinary pressure to maintain 98% operational uptime. The maintenance department developed a dark humor about their situation. They called themselves wizards, not for their technical skills, but for their ability to perform magic by keeping decrepit systems running with minimal resources. They shared gallows humor about which attraction would have the first serious incident, placing morbid bets they hoped would never pay out. Cast member safety reports paint a disturbing picture. Between 2020 and 2024, Tower of Terror maintenance workers filed 47 safety concerns through official channels. These ranged from inadequate fall protection equipment to requirements to work in active ride areas. Of these 47 reports, 45 were closed with no action required or addressed through training. The two that prompted equipment changes resulted in the minimal possible fixes. The company's response to safety concerns followed a predictable pattern. First, deny there was a problem. Second, if evidence was overwhelming, implement the cheapest possible solution. Third, create new training programs that shifted responsibility to workers for their own safety. Fourth, quietly reassign or terminate employees who continued raising concerns. Megan Lewis, with her enthusiasm, and social media presence, became an unwitting accomplice to this culture. Her willingness to take risks, framed as dedication and expertise, was held up as an example to other maintenance workers. When senior technicians objected to dangerous procedures, managers would point to Megan's example. She's 19 and she's not complaining. Maybe you're just not cut out for this job anymore. The week before the accident, a veteran technician named Robert Walsh submitted a formal complaint to OSHA about Tower of Terror working conditions. His report detailed requirements to inspect equipment while rides operated, inadequate safety restraints, and pressure to sign off on inspections without proper time for thorough examination. Disney's legal team intercepted the complaint before it triggered an inspection, and Walsh was placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Budget documents obtained through the investigation revealed the stark reality of Disney's maintenance priorities. While the company spent $2.3 million on new projection effects for the tower's queue area, requests for 400 zero-in safety equipment upgrades were denied. A comprehensive cable replacement program, estimated at $1.8 million, was postponed indefinitely, while $3.5 million was allocated for a new gift shop expansion. The pressure extended beyond maintenance to operations. Tower of Terror cast members were instructed to minimize downtime by overriding certain safety sensors, rushing load procedures, and discouraging guests from reporting minor issues. The attraction's theoretical hourly capacity of 600 guests became a mandatory minimum, regardless of conditions that might warrant slower, more careful operation. Disney's public relations machine worked overtime to maintain the illusion of perfect safety. When incidents occurred, a 2022 cable snap that narrowly missed a worker, a 2023 platform collapse that injured 2 technicians. They were kept out of media through combinations of non-disclosure agreements, financial settlements, and threats of litigation against employees who spoke publicly. The company's internal safety committee, supposedly independent, was staffed entirely by executives with financial stakes in maintaining operations. Their monthly reports consistently found that all attractions met or exceeded safety standards, even as maintenance workers were documenting critical failures in systems designed to protect them. 3 days before Megan's death, an anonymous maintenance worker posted in a private Facebook group, "Someone's going to die at Tower soon. We're being pushed to do inspections that should take an hour in 10 minutes. Safety equipment is falling apart. Management doesn't care as long as the ride keeps running. I'm scared every time I go up in that shaft." The post was screenshot and reported to Disney management by another employee, hoping to curry favor. Instead of investigating the safety concerns, management launched an investigation to identify the whistleblower. They were still trying to find the author when Megan Lewis clipped into her deteriorating safety harness on the morning of February 15. The corporate culture that prioritized magical experiences over worker safety had created a perfect storm. Aging equipment, deferred maintenance, silenced whistleblowers, and a young cast member eager to prove herself regardless of risks. The only question was not if a tragedy would occur, but when. February 15 began with the kind of pristine Florida morning that made tourists forget their real lives. By 6:30 a.m., Megan Lewis had already badged into Hollywood studios, her usual enthusiasm dampened by an urgent text from her supervisor. The Tower of Terror was experiencing minor cable oscillations during its morning test cycles. Nothing that would prevent opening, but something that needed checking. "Just do a quick visual inspection," maintenance supervisor Brad Coleman had texted. "We can't afford to go 101, Disney code for ride closure, on a President's Day weekend. You're small enough to squeeze past the cars if they're running. Should take you 20 minutes tops. The request violated every safety protocol in Disney's official manual. Shaft inspections required complete ride shutdown, lockout, tag-out procedures, two-person teams, and emergency response crews on standby. But Megan had done these quick checks before. She prided herself on being the go-to person when traditional procedures were too slow. At 7:15 a.m., Megan entered the tower through the maintenance access, joining Jake Morrison, who was monitoring ride systems from the control room. "You sure about this?" Jake asked, watching her clip into her safety harness. The harness, which should have been replaced 2 years earlier, according to manufacturer specifications, showed visible wear on the connection points. 20 minutes, Megan assured him, echoing her supervisor's words. "I'll be out before the first guests even get here." She grabbed her inspection tablet and headed for Shaft Alpha, the leftmost of the tower's drop shafts. The first sign of trouble came at 7:23 a.m. As Megan positioned herself on the inspection platform at the 130-foot level, she noticed the main cable's oscillation wasn't minor. It was swaying in a figure-8 pattern that indicated serious instability. She keyed her radio. "Jake, we might have a real problem here. This cable is moving way more than—" The sound that interrupted her was like a gunshot, amplified in the narrow shaft. One of the steel strands in the main cable had snapped under tension, whipping past Megan's head with enough force to crack the concrete wall behind her. She instinctively jerked backward, and that's when the cascade of failures began. Her sudden movement stressed the already worn connection point on her safety harness. The carabiner, which had been microfractured through years of use without inspection, cracked but didn't immediately fail. Megan, focused on the damaged cable, didn't notice she was now hanging from compromised equipment. At 7:26 a.m., Jake Morrison made the decision that would haunt him forever. Following the morning protocol, he initiated the ride's startup sequence. The computer systems, detecting no locked-out tags, began bringing the tower online. The massive motors hummed to life, adding vibration to the already unstable shaft environment. "Jake, shut it down." Megan's voice crackled through the radio. "The cable is—" Another strand snapped, and this time the whipping steel caught the platform she was standing on, buckling the metal grating. Megan grabbed for the service ladder as the platform tilted, throwing her full weight onto the failing harness. The carabiner held for exactly 3 more seconds. When it shattered, Megan found herself in freefall for a terrifying instant before her gloved hands caught the service ladder. She was now 130 feet up in a narrow shaft with no safety equipment, clinging to rungs slicked with hydraulic fluid residue, while above her a 2-inch steel cable was unraveling strand by strand. "Code red! Code red!" Jake screamed into the radio, frantically hitting the emergency stop. But the tower's aging computer system, overwhelmed by conflicting signals from the cable failure, locked up. The ride vehicles in the adjacent shafts continued their programmed sequences, shaking the entire structure. By 7:28 a.m., other maintenance workers were scrambling towards Shaft Alpha. The first guests of the day, already gathering at the attraction entrance, could hear shouting and alarms. Security cast members, following protocol, began telling guests the attraction was experiencing temporary technical difficulties. Megan's strength was failing. The ladder rungs, never designed for extended human support, were cutting into her hands through her work gloves. Below her was 130 feet of mechanical equipment and concrete, a fall that would be unsurvivable. Above, the failing cable continued to shed strands, each one whipping through the shaft like a deadly whip. "Hold on, Megan, we're coming." Jake had abandoned the control room and was racing up the emergency stairs. But the tower's design made rapid access nearly impossible. The emergency platforms were spaced 40 feet apart, and the nearest one to Megan was still 20 feet below her position. At 7:31 a.m., Megan made a desperate decision. She began trying to climb down toward the platform, knowing she couldn't hold on much longer. But her movements caused more cable strands to snap. A piece of fraying steel caught her shoulder, tearing through her costume and drawing blood. The pain caused her to lose her grip with one hand. For a moment that witnesses would describe as eternal, Megan hung by one hand, 130 feet above certain death. Her eyes, visible in the shaft's emergency lighting, showed not fear but a terrible understanding. She knew the physics. She knew her strength. She knew what was about to happen. "Tell my mom I love her," she said into the radio, her voice surprisingly calm. At 7:32:17 a.m., Megan Lewis lost her grip. The fall took 2.3 seconds. Security cameras, installed to monitor ride operations, captured every frame. Megan struck the emergency platform at 90 feet, the impact breaking her spine before deflecting her body into the machinery below. By the time Jake Morrison reached the shaft viewing port, Megan was motionless at the bottom, her body obscured by the mechanical equipment that had fascinated her so much in life. Emergency responders were on scene by 7:41 a.m., but there was nothing to be done. Megan Lewis was pronounced dead at 7:52 a.m., her body so traumatically injured that the coroner would recommend a closed casket. The Tower of Terror remained closed for 6 weeks while investigations began. Disney's public relations team worked overtime, initially claiming Megan had violated safety protocols by entering the shaft without authorization. This narrative collapsed when text messages revealed she had been ordered to perform the inspection by supervisors who were never charged. The final investigation report, released 8 months later, catalogued a systemic failure of safety culture. The cable that failed had been flagged for replacement 3 years earlier. Megan's safety harness was 2 years past its expiration date. The emergency stops had been deliberately slowed to prevent unnecessarily rough stops that might upset guests. The inspection she was performing should have required a 5-person team and complete ride shutdown. Jake Morrison never returned to work. In testimony, he broke down describing the sound of Megan hitting the platform, a sound he said he hears every time he closes his eyes. Brad Coleman, the supervisor who ordered the inspection, was quietly transferred to a non-operational role before leaving the company 6 months later. Disney settled with Megan's family for an undisclosed amount, estimated at $50 million. The Tower of Terror reopened with new safety protocols, new equipment, and a small plaque in the maintenance area that reads, "In memory of Megan Lewis, may we never forget that magic requires sacrifice, but never human sacrifice." But for those who were there that morning, who heard her final words, and witnessed a young woman's preventable death, the tower would never be the same. Every drop, every scream of delight from guests was now haunted by the memory of a very different kind of scream, one that ended not with laughter and applause, but with devastating silence. Megan Lewis died doing what she loved, in the place she loved most. But she died because a company that sold dreams had turned into a corporation that counted pennies while lives hung in the balance. Her death was not a tragedy of circumstance, but a preventable consequence of choices made in boardrooms far from the attractions where cast members risk their lives every day. If this story moved you, Please share it. The magical kingdoms we love are built on the dedication of workers like Megan Lewis. We owe it to them to demand that their safety matters more than our entertainment. Subscribe for more stories that reveal the truth behind the attractions we trust with our lives and the lives of those who make the magic possible. As for the Tower of Terror, it still operates today. The cables are new, the safety systems upgraded, the protocols reformed. But cast members say that on quiet mornings, when the shaft is empty and the machinery is still, you can sometimes hear an echo in Shaft Alpha, a young woman's voice full of passion and wonder, explaining how the magic works. The magic that killed her